Hello everyone, and welcome to the NX A to Z webinar on the NX Machinery Library. I'm going to go over how to download and install the library and then how to use it inside NX. Okay, so the first step is to download it, and you can just go to the GTAC support site on Siemens website, and there's a link in the article to this website, so you don't need to write down the URL or anything. Click on download and upload files, and then download files. You have to be an active NX customer because you need a WebKey account. If you don't have a WebKey account, you can get into the NX A to Z article on installing NX, and that goes through how to set up a WebKey account. Once you have your WebKey account, you can log in to the FTP server, select all Siemens PLM products, and once you're in here, you're going to select the NX/Unigraphics NX tab. Select your operating system, and at the bottom is the machinery library. So all of these are the libraries. There's ANSI Inch, ANSI Metric, DEN, DLA, ISO, etc., etc. But what you need first is the machinery library install tool. So you're going to want to download that. I would download this README file. It just kind of briefly goes through how to get the install tool set up so you can start an installation. And then download whatever libraries you want to start with. You don't have to download them all. You can just kind of add them as you go. So you can just pick one to start with and get your machinery library going, and then add more libraries later on. Alright, so I already have the machinery library downloaded. So if you download and unzip the machinery library, you'll have a folder with these two folders in it. And then these here are libraries. Alright, so you don't want to unzip the libraries. You just want to unzip the install tool. And then if you go into the user guide folder, here's the instructions on how to actually run the install tool. So we're just going to address native mode for the webinar, but there are instructions in here on how to do it for Team Center as well. So basically, to run the install tool, all you have to do is take the library zip file that you downloaded and put it in this folder, the LIBS libraries, and then start and then run this batch file. I don't think I'm supposed to run it as administrator. Don't run it as administrator, just run it normally. Okay, so that will start the installation, and you've got a couple options. So we're doing native mode. Alright, so the first time you install it, you want to select create a new installation. If you already have installed one of the libraries and you're just adding another one, then you want to upgrade an existing installation. So we're going to do create a new installation. And it's loading the library now from the zip file that I just put in there. So it knows I want to install ANSI Inch. You can see that you can put as many zip files in there as you want for the first time you install, and then anytime after that you just select to upgrade an existing installation, and it will recognize whatever other libraries you have in there. Now this is just a local directory. This is the default, and that's fine if the machinery library is just for you. But if you are managing a network with multiple NX users, then you're going to want to put this on a network folder. And this is where mine is out here, but you would do something similar. So you select the folder and you hit next, and it basically just extracts and installs all of the part files and whatever other related information is necessary. And that's it for the install. Alright, so I've already got mine installed. So once you have the library installed, there's two ways you can get the library loaded into NX. The first way is just to come into here. This is the Reuse Library Navigator. And you want to do library management. And you want to add a library. And you just browse to the folder where you installed it. Alright, don't select these folders. Select the folder called Machinery Library. So the folder above all the actual libraries. You click OK, and then you'll have the Machinery Library in here. Now if you want to set it up for a network of NX users, then you want to use customer defaults. So first you have to set up a site directory for your network. And to set up a site directory, you can look at the NX A to Z article on it's the NX Network Configuration Part 1. And that goes through how to set up the environment variables and the system variables, and it uses the site directory as an example. So if you just walk through that, you'll have a site level directory, and you can come into the customer defaults and you can edit the site level default so that everyone will be using the same machinery library. So select Site under Gateway, go to Reuse Library, and you want to add this line right here. So Machinery Library, and then the bar, and then the directory. So whatever you're using. And then make sure you lock it at the site level. And then one other setting is the part family save directory. So these reusable components are not saved in the same folder as the top level assembly or wherever it is you put them. They're saved in this directory right here. So the best way to set this up, at least from a network standpoint, is to create another folder out here where you set up your machinery library. And call it Part Family Save Directory. And then inside that folder, create a folder for each one of your users and use their logon name. And now in here, you can go to that folder and instead of putting the logon name, just put the variable. And that way each user's components will get saved in their own directory, but because those directories are going to be on the network and available to everyone, anybody can open up the assembly and all the components will load properly. And users can open up whatever they're working on any computer and still access those directories. And you don't have to worry about setting it up individually on each user's machine, because this site level default will work for everybody. Okay? Okay. So now you've got the machinery library connected. Now let's add some components to an assembly. Okay, so the machinery library, you can see I've got it in the reuse library. I've got the 3 different libraries that I installed. And to get reusable components from the machinery library into an assembly, all you got to do is just find the one you want and drag it onto the design surface, and that will bring up the Add Reusable Component dialog. So each reusable component is essentially just a list of different sizes, and depending on the component, there may be one or two or three different parameters in here that you can adjust. These socket head cap screws have two, essentially the size and the length, and everything else is just controlled by selecting those two parameters. So if I just do a quarter, half-inch long, I don't have any other components, so I can't do the constraints right now, but we'll get some more components in here and go through that as well. So that's it. Now this is in my assembly. It shows up in a component. This is the reusable component or part family indicator. If I want to change the size, I just go to here and edit reusable component. Brings this back up, and I can change the size. And let's open a part where we can actually do the other stuff. So all right, let's see here. See what size hole this is, and maybe we'll add so that's a 1/4 inch hole. Okay, so reusable component dialog, socket head cap screw. Now I'm actually going to select this face, and I'll show you why in a minute. So I select that face, and NX knows that's a cylindrical face. The size is a 1/4 inch and it's 2 inches long, so it went ahead and selected the component size that I needed for that size hole. Now if I also select use inferred constraints, it also created the constraints to position that. Not only did it position the component in the hole, but it also constrained the component to the hole. So if I look at the degrees of freedom now, this thing can only rotate, which is relevant. That doesn't matter. The constraints that matter have been established, and now this thing is fully positioned. So, but I can always go in here and edit it. I didn't want 2 inch long. I wanted 1 inch long, whatever. So NX got it wrong. I didn't want that size. Again, the constraints are still there, no problem. Now I've got a shorter component. Now if I had a whole feature in this part that would, well, I can probably do this. Let's see. Guess not. We'll try adding it to these holes and see if it will position in both holes. So let's try this. Why not? So if you have a whole feature and you have multiple holes in the same feature, then there's another option here that says create component pattern, and that will fill. Here, I've got a good example. Let's do this. So here I've got just a plate with a bunch of holes in it, and if I add say something like this, so now I've got the option to create component pattern and put it in upside down, so I want to flip it. And now I created all these constraints and added the screws to all of the holes. So, all right. So, another feature when you're adding these reusable components from the machinery library is you can create pockets. So if I don't have a hole, I just know where I want the screw. So it knows how long it needs to be to get through the part. I don't have a hole there, but I can go into the pocket dialog and tell NX that I want to put a pocket in this part. So now I've got the pocket as well. And I can go back in if I want to get rid of the pocket. Just edit the reusable component. I don't want the pocket. So whatever you decide to do, you can always change your mind later. I can make a threaded hole for the end of the part, although I don't think the depth of this is deep enough for the threaded hole. So, but if you do have multiple components and you've got them stacked and you're attaching them with a screw, it will create a threaded hole in the bottom component. So, okay, let's see what else was there. You can edit these things in NXCAD as well if you just make them unique. If you make them unique, then they become no longer associated with the part family, and they're not, this edit reusable component really doesn't do much. But you can just go into NXCAD and edit them and do whatever you need to do to them. So you can also edit the part families as well. You can create your own parts, and you can make them adjustable the way these parts are. But I wouldn't recommend making those parts part of the NX machinery library. I would keep the two separate because it will make updates and whatnot easier. And in a future article, I'll go through how to make your own adjustable parts and create your own directory where you can save those things. But something you can do with these is you can add different sizes to the existing machinery library components. So if you go out to the machinery library and just go into these libraries, these are the, these just coincide to these folders over here. And inside these directories, each component has a bitmap, which is just the legend for the dimensions. It has a KRX file. This is a Knowledge Fusion file that configures the reusable component dialog, and there's the actual NX part file. So if you want to add an additional size, just go out to the library component and open up the part families spreadsheet. So you go to Tools, Part Families, and then you see Part Family Spreadsheet here, and you edit that. And this is where you can add another size to an existing component. So keep in mind though that when you update the library, it may overwrite your custom sizes. So you may want to just I guess, keep a history of the things that you added, the sizes that you added, so that if you do update the library and you find some of your custom sizes are missing, you can put them back in easily. So that's it. That's how you use the NX Machinery library. Pretty simple to download and install, and all you got to do is just drag the parts out into an assembly, and more often than not, NX will even constrain them for you. So it's very easy, very useful. There's thousands of parts out there. There's, I don't even know, 8 different standards that are covered, and you know, quite a wide assortment of parts for each standard as well. So I hope you learned something, and I'll see you again next month.